I'm excited to introduce you to a new friend and a business partner through City Team and our featured speaker tonight. So I'm going to read his bio because it's better from the source. So Vance Rush is a dad of three kids, Lennox, Emerson, and baby boy Tatum, as well as husband to the incredible Kim. Hopefully she'll be on this call. And who I stalk. So, hey, alongside being on the founding team of Vive Church, he's founded Overflow, a tech company on mission to inspire the world to give. And we're going to find out more about that. He loves startups, basketball, which team, he never said, spoken word, pasta and charcuterie is your vice. And you can't wait to get back to Italy. So let's give it up for Vance. Take it away.
Hey, thanks, Grace. What's up, everybody? It's good to see everybody. It's good to see Team Overflow on the call as well. The host has spotlighted your video for everyone. Nice. Very cool. So I'm like large on all of your screens. That's amazing. I'm excited to be here. Grace thought it would be good for me to maybe share my story
Yep.
and our journey of, really starting Overflow, and how faith has played a big part of that, which it has for sure. And then maybe we can kind of jump into some questions, right, Grace?
Yep. That would be
Awesome,
awesome.
awesome.
So yeah.
And then feel free, guys. I'm like, I can multitask if you have questions that you want to put in the chat, or just unmute yourself and we can have a conversation. I don't think it would get too crazy to do that. I know that this is being recorded as well, so people are going to be able to listen to this later. But a little bit about myself, like Grace said, we have a growing family, but we started very, very humbly back in 2010. I first met my wife actually at church, at church. So we met at a church called, uh, it was called City Church at the time. It's now Church Home, up in Seattle. So we're from the Pacific Northwest. And I had just started going back to church. So like I really wasn't like living for God the first 2 years in college. But then, felt a conviction to go back to church. So I dedicated to God. I was like, hey, God, I'm going to go back to church. Actually, after a study abroad trip to Italy. So when I got back to America, I was like, okay, God, I'm going to go back to church. And this is how much God loves me, is because the first time I go back to church, I meet Him. And I was just, trying to do my thing, trying to reconnect with God. And she approached me, actually. She like made a beeline for me. And she was like, hey, Vance, you don't know me, but I know you. You were the only Filipino on the Kentwood basketball team, and you're an Area 5 DECA president. Okay, bye. And then she left. And I was like, who the heck is that girl right there? And then I realized that we actually went to rival high schools. So I went to this school called Kentwood. She went to this school called Kent Meridian. My school won everything in sports. Her school lost everything in sports. So that's just something that I tell her all the time, and she can't live it. She can't live it down. So we kind of made that connection because we were part of the same hometown. I realized she was part of some of my business classes, and we started a friendship. That friendship progressed into an engagement, and then right after we graduated, we ended up getting married. So we got married, and then we moved down to the Bay Area, where I got a job at Google, and Kim got a job teaching for Teach for America in San Jose. And so that's where we started our young marriage, our young careers. As you do in your early 20s, you feel like you can take on the world. But first things first was, as we started our career, we wanted to find a church, right? And so we started looking like every single Sunday night, every single Wednesday night. We're like, hey, we met in church. We want to make sure that we are part of a church so that we can serve, and faith is a big part of our life. And so we would like be at a different church, like, every Sunday. And we literally couldn't find anything that resonated with us. Like, and it was weird because it was not like there wasn't good churches, but we'd fill out the new guest connect card, you know what I mean? And we would even sign up for kids ministry, and we just didn't get a call back. I'm like, we're signing up for kids ministry. Like, and for some reason we weren't getting followed up. And it was like really weird. It was like a strange 2 months where I was like, man, what's going on? We can't get plugged into community. So we were living in San Jose at the time. So we're like, surely there's cool, young, hip churches in San Francisco, right? We didn't know. We were probably calling it San Fran at the time. So we were just like, up in San Fran, we're going to go check out churches. And so we go up there and we actually find a pretty cool church. And so we go in, we're like, okay, cool. This is like, we had to drive over an hour, but we can do it. Like, cool young people up here. And then, as they are kind of making the announcements, one of the pastors comes up and they say, hey, we're going to start one of these, a similar church in San Jose. And Kim and I are like, oh, wow, that's so cool. Like, we want to hear more about that. So the pastor that made the announcement approached us after and was like, hey, nice to meet you guys. And we're like, you talked about like there's going to be a church starting similar to this in San Jose. We would love to get connected because we actually drove from San Jose. And he was like, okay, cool. I'm going to connect you with this couple, Adam and Kara Smallcombe. They're in Australia right now, but they plan to move to the Silicon Valley more south to start a church. So we're like, cool, awesome. On the drive down to back home, we get a tweet from Pastor Adam, like literally like the same day we get a tweet. And that's why I call Twitter the holy dove. I know that's not like what everybody thinks about it. Uh, but it was like a holy dove type moment where we are just like, oh my gosh, like this pastor from Australia is like texting us or tweeting us. And so we're just going back and forth on Twitter, and they're like, hey, heard you're looking for a church. We want to start a church. We want to meet. And we were like, yeah, sure, let's meet. Are you guys here? They're like, no, we're still in Australia, but we can be there next week. I was like, okay, like, let's do it. So we met in San Jose, and then we literally that the week after we toured them around Stanford, Google, we went on the Google bikes and everything. Just 3 hours, toured around the Bay Area, and then we ended up in a Thai restaurant for lunch. Just known them 3 hours, right? And they start giving us this vision, right, for this church that they're going to build in the Bay Area. A lot of young people, relevant believers, even non-believers. They're going to come in. They're going to feel like they can belong. People are going to be passionate. They're going to find their calling, their purpose, their meaning in life. And I'm just eating pad thai, just like, that sounds awesome. I'm like 21 years old. I'm like, that's great. Like, we're not even part of a church. That sounds amazing. And then after their whole vision pitch, they go, okay, start it with us. We only known them 3 hours, literally. Like, they're just like, start it with us. Based off of pure naivety, we said, yeah, let's do it. Like, we didn't even know like what that meant. We're just like, yeah, sure. That sounds great. And so this is funny. This is related to giving and overflow. We were like, what's our next step? Like, what do we need to do? And then Pastor Adam, he was like, give, start tithing. And this is how early it was. We're like, cool, yeah, we believe in tithing, we believe in giving. Where do we give to? He's like, hold that thought. I got to start a bank account. That's how early it was in the journey. And so that was in 2012, right? And a couple months later, they sold everything. They moved their 3 girls to San Jose, and we started services in their living room in 2012. Today, since then, that was like 9 years ago, we're over 4,000 members across 10 physical locations around the world. And so, in talking about my entrepreneurial journey, I think, and technology, like the through line, through all of that is actually the journey of this community that we've been building. A lot has been just inspired by that. A lot of growth, a lot of my leadership is really directed and learned from that experience. But simultaneous to everything that was happening in the church, I was in tech this whole time, right? I started at Google, then I got recruited to lead product at a tech startup called Adara. It's a data technology company. We serve the largest travel brands in the world. We knew when Grace booked the ticket to LA, and so we would know how to show her a Disneyland ad, right? Saving the world through trying to get Grace to go to, retargeting, remarketing, all that type of stuff. And it was great. I mean, it was cool from the perspective of like, it was a really high growth startup, and that was exciting, right? But I just always knew that there was something that was kind of deeper and more meaningful that we were meant to do. And so while I was like really blessed by having that provide really well for our family, I always kind of had this stirring inside of I'm probably one day going to build something different to what we're doing here at Adara. And it really started in the summer of 2019,
Wow.
where it was just this kind of like annoyance. I tell like people that are thinking about starting companies all the time, don't do it. Like, it's the worst way to make money. Like, just like don't do
Yeah.
it. It's like really really hard because I knew a little bit through Vive. Like, it's just really hard. Like, there's a lot of sacrifice. There's not really any money up front, right? Like,
Right.
it's really difficult. Um, but only do it if you can't do anything else, right? If it's just like you can't stop thinking about it, like you can't, like, you know, then you should do it. Like, if it's literally the only thing that you can do. And so that was kind of like the frustration, the annoyance, the thing that was kind of being purged inside of me in the summer of 2019. And I didn't actually know what it was. I just knew that God was like, Vance, you need to start something. And that's when I was just like starting to wind down all projects in faith because I didn't really even know what that was. And there was a lot of little things along the way that guided me. One was this program called On Deck based in San Francisco, where it was an entrepreneurial community that is a pretty catalytic community that helps founders kind of start up things.
Right.
But simultaneous to hearing about that program, I already started kind of getting this sense that the next thing that I'm going to do is going to be centered around giving and generosity. Because it's been kind of like a foundation to mine and Kim's life since we got married. We disagree on a lot of things. I don't know who's married on this call, but like, actually, we disagree on most things. One thing that we agree on, we agreed on when we got married was that we were going to make sure that we're always generous, like just in every aspect. Like, we're always going to be the first to try to pay for the bill. We're always going to try to bless people with gifts. We're always going to try to just like live an extravagantly generous life, right? That's just one mark that we wanted on our marriage. And so in that, there's this verse in the Bible that talks about, hey, if you build God's house, he'll build your house. So it's just this confidence that, hey, I don't really need to worry about my needs. Like, if I believe in God, I know that he's going to care for my needs. So I just need to continue to be outward focused and, and just caring for others and giving to others. And so that was kind of a mark on our marriage. And I knew God was stirring like, okay, there's something there that I want you to do. And then he like impressed upon my heart this specific verse, Proverbs 11:24. The world of the generous gets larger and larger. The world of the stingy gets smaller and
Mhm.
smaller. And I just got so captivated by that truth. Whether you believe in the Bible or not, there's just this fundamental thing I think that people agree upon, that there's intrinsic value when you give,
Yeah.
right? That's why like Christmas is so popular, right? It's like better to give than to receive. Like, there's like literally something happens chemically in
Yeah.
your
Feel
body,
good.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that you can't, like, literally when you give, you feel good, right? It's just a
Right.
dopamine hit. And so I was like, okay, if this is spiritually true, if this is scientifically true, why would we not want every single human being on the planet to experience the life of the generous? Right? So if like, Facebook is literally spending hundreds of millions of dollars to try to optimize the dopamine hits in your brain to open up Facebook as much as possible so they can continue to serve you
Yeah.
Disneyland ads, so they can continue to make so much money and
Yes.
continue to do world domination. If they have so much energy, but like they're actually changing behavior.
Right.
So like,
That's scary.
this phone, right? This phone is like, when I'm looking at it and I'm always down, like that literally is changing the physiology of how we were created, right? That's not how we're meant to live, actually.
Right.
So, but they figured out a way to hack it to where like your body is now used to that. So it's habitual, and it literally changed society. They've changed behavior, right?
Yeah.
Because they figured out ways to do dopamine hits in unnatural ways. Okay, so if
Right.
this first principle is true, the world of generous gets larger and larger. I don't need to change behavior for my product to be addicting. I just need to restore behavior to how it was naturally created. Right? So
True.
I actually probably it's the best business model ever because I don't even have to fabricate anything. I
Right.
just need to facilitate a product that makes giving easier
Yeah.
because people inherently want to give. That's our bet. Our bet as a company is just resting on the fact that we're just fundamentally believing that the world will become more generous. If that is not true, overflow doesn't exist next year. Like it doesn't matter how much money I can raise or whatever. Like if that's just not true, then overflow has no business, right? The only reason that overflow potentially has a business is if we believe that human beings will become more and more generous over time. And more human beings will start to give for the very first time. And
Yeah.
that's just what we're betting on. We're just betting on that. So if we're betting on that and we believe that that's part of our wiring, then all we really need to do is try to remove barriers. We don't need to convince people actually to give. I don't need
Yeah.
to do a bunch of inspirational videos and things like that. I just need to make it easy. I just need to make it the right button in the right place. I
Right.
need to make it done in 60 seconds. I need to make it as pleasant and as easy and as instant as Venmo.
Yeah.
And if we could do that, then we're just believing that the natural fabric of humanity will carry our company into number one, business wise, a really valuable company. But that also means that then people are giving more and more, or new people are giving for the very first time. So that's our story. That's overflow. But I talked way too long, so we can ask
No, no,
questions.
no. No, this is great. No, but so the persona of the giver, right? And you were talking about it could be it's we're already inherently givers, but you're just trying obviously you're at a place and you're making it easier. But I think people feel like they're not that persona of a giver. So how do you what does like tell me about the product real quickly,
Yeah.
briefly. Do the pitch. But then obviously you're around among friends, so it's not like really a pitch. It's more of a
Yeah.
why is it convenient? Why is it easier? What makes it overflow different from what I have now? How are you,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Good question, Grace. So the high level thesis about the business specifically is that we have a big vision. We actually do want to be the platform for all giving, right? For all asset classes, but we're very specific in where we're starting, and we're starting with stocks. The reason why we're starting with stocks is because it's the highest leverage asset class that has been largely underserved, right, in terms of the nonprofit fundraising space. And so if you think about it, like this is an actual stat from National Christian Foundation.
right,
90% of donors' wealth is actually in non-cash assets, not cash assets. But if you think about nonprofits, even the biggest ones, exclusively fundraise ACH debit and credit. So it's the biggest missed opportunity ever in the history of nonprofit fundraising is not having a button for stocks next to the button for ACH debit credit. It's
right,
just fundamentally missing. And so why do nonprofits not promote this more? The reason is because it's hard, right? So basically, they have to give brokerage information. First of all, they have to have a brokerage account. If they do, they have to give the details to the donor, and then the donor has to download a form from Charles Schwab, fill it out, and fax it in,
right.
right? And so that's just not going to happen. And it's not happening at scale. And so we've taken that process that's manual and we've made it a button.
Yeah, and like honestly, maybe it's more the fear of giving a stock donation.
Yeah,
So, I know that we at City Team are using it and it's awesome because it's another revenue opportunity and it gives our donors another way to give.
right.
So um, yeah, and we've seen that and just and another persona. So if there's for nonprofits or those who are thinking about that or folks on the call, like this is definitely something that is opportunity and
Yeah.
And I think also looking at the giving differently, because we look at giving differently when we give like actually from a credit or a cash gift
Yeah.
versus a stock, because it's especially in this rich area that we're at, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I just think, and just that perception, and like just going back to what you were talking about, the whole abundance and just having that mentality and the attitude. There's a lot of folks out here that have that aptitude to give, but they don't even think about it that way. They just think,
Yeah.
oh, I'm a once and twice a year kind of giver,
Right.
right? And how are we trying to change that? So I guess bigger questions is like, how do you see overflow not only being a tool, but also changing that mindset, whether you believe it or not, like
Yeah.
just change
Yeah.
that mindset. Like as you were saying, that you believe
Yeah.
people inherently want to give.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's you know, practically, like just speaking in purely business terms,
Sure.
I think it's making giving high signal, right? So what's high signal right now is to be on Forbes, right? How does Forbes measure signal and success? They say, okay, who has the top net worth in America, right? Okay, well, that means that you're incentivizing actually people not to give. And that's why you have people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett that says, I will give 90% when I die because they care about the list.
Mm,
They care about the list, right?
right.
What if we just change the list? What if we said, cool, Forbes, you can have your list of how much somebody made, but not how much they kept, right? Net worth is what you keep. But how about the list is how much you made? And then if there's a supplementary Forbes list, that's how much you gave, right? You just have to make it high signal. Like you have to make it cool to give, right? Like, oh, there's a list on the most generous people. I want to be at. So that's just practical. That's not spiritual. That's just practical, right? And I think it's just understanding that there are human mechanisms. There's ego, right? There are human mechanisms, and
Yeah.
but I believe this, that if you can give, the Bible says, taste and see that the Lord is good, right? So I'm not ever trying to convince people of my faith. I'm not trying to ever, because there's more convincing people than me. If I persuade somebody to believe in what I believe, somebody else is going to persuade them to believe what they believe, right? Like somebody's going to be more persuasive than me. But the Bible says, taste and see that the Lord is good. That means, okay, if it's not evident from my life, if what you see and what you taste and what you experience is not something that actually impacts your life, then it's not going to actually resonate, right?
Right.
So I actually believe that you can take mechanisms like ego and you can repurpose it to give people an appetite that, oh, I thought I was giving to get on this list, but now I'm realizing that giving is just good.
Right.
And
Or
then you start asking deeper questions like, why? Okay, cool. I just want to keep doing it.
yeah, and whether you know how it's a habit, whether some people give, whether it's performative, and then they actually believe it, and then they're really
Mhm.
giving. That happens.
Exactly.
Well, isn't
All
that
the
how
time. All the time.
all the time? Yeah.
All the time.
So
We do it in nonprofits, right, Grace? We do the tiers like, oh, platinum level giver, and like, oh,
yes,
you get the seat and you get the
yes,
plaque, and
yes.
it's all signal. It's all signal. It's actually not really the true intent of generosity,
Right.
but it's just like, okay, cool. Let's use these mechanisms to get them in the door, but then let's hopefully like the deeper principle sets in that this is just good. This is great.
Yeah, and then they become engaged and involved, and then they care, and yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I'm seeing a few questions coming, and I don't want to, and I'm also and you keep me on time, but actually, a couple of people are bringing up. Obviously, have we been leveraging? He's actually asking you a question. This is Alex saying,
Yeah.
not only could it be inherited or desired, folks are incentivized to give for tax purposes, obviously, which tax efficient, right?
Yeah.
Um, they're incentivized for different reasons, but yeah, talk a little bit about that. Actually, can talk about the tax efficient
Yeah.
benefits? Talk a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
bit about that, and then just if you even have a chance to just show, like I'm keeping track on time, just show real quickly. if you have a demo or something. Just
Yeah, we can do that.
give us a look see.
A little look-see,
A
okay.
look see. But yeah, well, but yeah, why?
I love it. Yeah,
The
so let
a
me
lot
let
of
me
people don't know a lot of these things. Why is it tax efficient? What is happening when
yeah.
you give traditionally versus using this platform?
Yeah, so basically, really quick, the tax benefits are pretty great. So what happens is that if you're sitting on capital gains tax in your stock portfolio, many people are in the Bay Area because they get compensated in stock. Facebook stock, Google stock, Apple stock are all appreciating stock, especially in the last 10 years. So let's say I'm sitting on $10,000 worth of capital gains in Apple, right? In my position in Apple. What that means is if I ever realize that stock gain, I need to pay immediately, right, up to 37% in capital gains tax to the government, and then I get the remainder. So let's just say easy math, I get 6,000. So I can then buy something with that $6,000, or I can give it, but I give $6,000, not $10,000, right? But if I give the stock directly to City Team, shameless plug, City Team, and they get the $10,000 gain when they liquidate the stock because they're a 501c3 tax exempt organization. They don't have to pay any capital gains tax. Thank you, US government. And so they get the full 10,000, but also the donor gets the full $10,000 as a charitable deduction, right? Not 6,000, they get a $10,000 deduction. So they save more on taxes. Here's the hack. This is arbitrage. You're welcome. You guys can thank me later. But if you want to rebuy your position in Apple because you were going to give cash anyways, but you gave stock, you can then rebuy it with the cash you have on hand, rebuy that Apple stock at a new cost basis, the higher cost basis. So when it goes up again, the delta is only at that new cost basis, not the old one, which is way, way low here.
Right. So then
And
it's
then so you actually make money giving. Yeah,
yeah.
it's crazy.
So that's another.
Yeah.
So that's okay. Hey, so I know a few people have some hot questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
Feel free. I was just going to say, go for it and ask. I know John had a question or two
Yeah.
about kingdom perspectives and the
Yeah.
principle theology of technology. So, John,
Yeah. Yes. And I'm just going to say really quick because we were on this, Bernard brought up a good point. If Biden's law
oh,
passes,
that's right.
this is
You just
even more
yeah,
exacerbated and people, overflow is going to blow up. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that bill, but
kind of weird. Yeah.
if it actually passes, it's great for us. Anyways, prior to the meetup, you shared with a few of us kingdom perspectives and principles of theology of technology and that you incorporate in Overflow's culture. Can you unpack that for this larger group? Yeah, so I mean, we're pretty straightforward that we're built on an ancient proverb, right? The proverb that I shared a little bit earlier, the world of the generous gets larger and larger. So it is what it's who we are, right? Not everybody on my team is a believer, but I kind of have talked to everybody, believer or non-believer, that has joined the team. And right before they sign the offer letter, I give an anti-sell. I try to do this with everybody and say, hey, like this is who we are, and you know, um, actually, I'm just gonna call this out because I did this with Alicia, who's on this call, right? And and I was giving this anti-sell, and I didn't want to give the anti-sell because I really wanted Alicia to join the team, but and I didn't want to scare her away, but I just did it anyways because I knew I had to be straightforward. And then she was like, "Oh, it's obvious," and I was just like, "Okay, cool, like, like good." So it's not like I'm bait and switching anybody. It's just I think ultimately when you think about okay, incorporating whatever word you want to use, spirituality, theology, whatever, faith,
Mhm.
into your company, I think it really is just about being authentic,
Yeah.
right? I think
Absolutely.
if you overthink it, then it becomes weird. But I think if it's just who you are, people understand that, oh, that's just who they are, right? And that's what they do. So I
So
don't know
you
if that answers the question specifically, but yeah.
does it? Okay. So which brings up to that the whole culture, like the how you lead, because you're pastor, you're also here managing over how do you straddle those two worlds? Like it's just you are you the same, right? I mean, that's what I'm getting. That's what I'm
I
hearing.
hope so. I hope
Hope so,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, if
I,
you challenge how it leads you to better lead the team, or like what are you seeing for, like we just talked about, if Biden, if the whole thing passes, and it's going to be potentially gravy train because the wealthiest are going to need something, or what like what do you see? What do you see, like maybe just in the next 6 months? I mean, you'll probably get that. I know this is one of those typical questions you don't have to answer that one, but
oh, I think so. Like prediction, I think Biden's law is going to pass, but they're going to have to negotiate, right? I think he's just thrown out a crazy big number, 39%, because
mhm,
he's expecting to get it to 32% or something, right? From 20% long-term capital gains. So I think he's just anchoring it at 39%.
yeah,
Um, really smart tactic. Jose knows about anchoring. You anchor it at 39% because they want to get 32%. So I think it's going to pass. I think it's going to pass, which is going to mean that we're going to increase, which is going to mean investment's going to get weird, right? So if
yeah,
you're a startup, if you're in technology right now, I don't know who's a startup in this call, like you should raise money now. Because I think when this passes, people are going to, if you think about it like an investor, let's say it goes to 40%, investor is going to then now need double the return on their investment to get the same benefit
right,
before this, right? And so investment is going to potentially slow down, or at least they're going to be a lot more picky about the people that they bet on and the companies that they bet on, right? Right now, it's a little bit of like a hot market in terms of capital right now. So that's going to just shift things.
oh yeah,
Uh, yeah,
definitely.
specifically. But yeah, in terms of like how I manage overflow and vibe and things like that, I think I don't recommend it actually. I don't actually recommend doing like so many things. But if you're going to try to do things that require high capacity, I think what's required is a lot of synergy. So I think there's an advantage that I have because Vive is a customer of Overflow and Overflow is a vendor of Vive, right? And so there's just like natural synergies, right? There. And so there's a lot of like insight specifically of why I have founder market fit, right? Because I'm also the customer of
Right, you've got both
the
sides.
technology that I'm building, right?
Right,
So I think if you're going to do a lot of things, there you should try to make it as synergistic as possible. But generally, I've changed my mindset about if you should do a lot of things. I think you have to understand that it means trade-offs and sacrifice, right?
right.
Yeah.
And so one of the expanded questions was, what's the future that Overflow wants to build? What does a life of generous look like? I think you've kind of, I think you know, I guess a little more specific. What generous look like? It would not only maybe for the company, for yourself.
Yeah. I, I think what would be really cool is if we had a culture where giving was just standard,
Hmm.
right? I think it would be cool if actually people were negotiating their offer letters at Facebook, Google, Apple, their comp packages
Yeah,
based on giving,
that
right? There's like a giving clause. And it's like, no, 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 like I'm negotiating this because I've already pre-committed that I'm giving 10% of everything to nonprofits and causes I believe in. And so that would be awesome. Because generally, if people are giving, that means they're grateful. If people are grateful, that means they're not arguing about what they're against. They're conversating about what they're for, right? It's just a different dynamic. We live in a society today that's like this, right? And so they're closed fists, which means
yeah,
they're ready, they're ready
absolutely
to
like
they're
that.
ready to fight,
Right.
Like everybody's ready to clap back. Like everybody's ready to fight and tell each other like what they don't like and all that type of stuff. Because we live like this. It's kind of like it's me, mine, and I got to get mine. It's a dog eat dog world, all that type of stuff. But if you
Yeah.
just live like this, like if you literally like just live open, it literally changes your physiology. It changes the way you enter a room. It changes the way you talk about things. It just you're just kinder, you're open, you're more empathetic because it's like, all of this is not even just my own. Like this is just how I live, right?
Right. Wow. Yeah. Huh. Well, um, I know Yan, you had like a kind of overarching question, but before we go to that, I was curious because we didn't actually, I wanted to get a chance if you wanted to show sort of the,
Oh yeah, let's
yeah,
show the
show it
product,
really quick.
man.
'Cause
This
I
is
think we do need to, we're going to kind of break out and and there's a lot of questions, then we can get specific. So
yeah,
let's do
yeah.
those.
We got a newer flow, but I'm just gonna show this because it's a slick video that shows kind of both sides of the
Awesome.
product. But essentially, if a donor wants to donate to a nonprofit, they just need to connect to their brokerage account directly on our app. And then we pull in the donor's holdings. So this person wants to give Uber and Tesla stock. And then if it's their first time, they enter a couple pieces of account information and then give us authorization to be able to transfer the stock on their behalf. In 60 seconds, literally, you can initiate a stock donation to a nonprofit, and the nonprofit on their end, they get a fancy dashboard that allows them to track the donations as well as directly from the dashboard acknowledge the donations with the charitable acknowledgement letter, which is a game changer if you want to try to do stock donations at scale. And so that's overflow. I mean, we're starting with stocks, but in a couple months we're launching crypto. By the end of the year, we're gonna go for private stock donations and be the button for all giving.
That's no, that's really cool. And I can say one thing for at City Team, we, those attributes of those who give, I mean, that gives us more insight and information and how we can engage with our donors better. So we super appreciate that, and you've really helped in that way. And we would, huge supporter of you.
We love City Team. Just the way that City Team does everything is like phenomenal. From your email newsletters to the way that you do happy hours and webinars to the way that you engage with partners is just top notch, literally. It's no accident that you guys have had such a massive impact in the Bay Area and beyond. So
Right.
we're
We're
big, big advocates.
definitely thankful. So, I wanted to ask, so Yan, I know you had the general question that we could probably pose and maybe discuss more. And then maybe if everyone has some questions to put in chat so that we can kind of go over that either
Yeah.
way. Would that be I'm going to leave it kind of direct it to you, Yan?
Yeah, what we can do is we have time for maybe one or two questions right now, and then we'll
Yeah.
go into breakout rooms, and then we'll come back after the breakout rooms for an extended Q&A. So y'all can share your insights from your group discussions as well, and we can continue the conversation that way.
Cool.
But I guess, yeah, the last thing I typed in the chat was
Yeah.
what's an optimistic. So this is more of a thought exercise because you've shared a lot about the positive impact that you hope
Uh-huh.
what your building will make. And my question is more around, um, what could like, what's a critical view of what you're building? What are some alternative like situations that this could cause? And like, how do you think about the theology of that?
Mm. Yeah. My theology is that the future is what you create, right? That if you believe in God, right, isn't it crazy that God, if you believe in God, right, literally God, he's said to be holy. Holy literally means other. So that means God is other than anything that you can think, imagine. You can't even comprehend it as a human being, right? So if you believe in God, it's crazy to think that he would limit himself and his plans and his purposes on earth through finite, human beings, right? But he does, right? And so, and the Bible always talks about how God lives in you, right? It's God, Jesus is the hope of glory that literally lives inside of you. And so, it's clear theologically that, okay, if you believe in God and he lives in you, that means the same God that created the universe, right? And he said, let there be light. Literally that means that words, language is not primarily for communication, it's for creation. So if we are going to create the future, my theology is that we need to start with declaring and saying and being very clear about what that future should look like and should be, right? And so I guess it's difficult for me to understand how our specific mission plays out negatively, because I'm very empowered in the fact that we have the agency inside us to continue to push it forward towards the intent of this principle that the world of the generous gets larger and larger. I will say this, something I cannot control is public criticism. And so how this plays out badly is pastor profits from city team and hundreds of other nonprofits. I I can't control somebody writing about that, right? So people can be negative, and will always be people that will try to put a negative spin on things. All we can do is control our narrative,
Yeah.
right? So
Actually, so hey Vance, what do you
yeah.
see for I mean, what do you see? What is your desire, not only for you personally, but for overflow? I mean, really, that on your high, or you just like whatever, God? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I know that's a loaded question,
Yeah.
but ask. There's always it's okay to have that aspiration for you.
Yeah.
As a team
I'm
leader,
a very
as a
I'm a very like I'm a very anti wait on God and whatever
right,
God type of mentality, right? Because I think people have a very misconstrued idea of what it means to wait on God. I think the ideology sometimes is, I'm just gonna, whatever your will is, God, like just direct me. Like some sort of like literal dove is gonna come down with a scroll and you're gonna read it and like, oh man, God spoke audibly to me. Like I've literally never heard God speak audibly to me. Right? Like, I don't know if that makes me less spiritual. I just like never heard him. I don't know if he has a British accent or probably Australian accent for sure. I just don't know. Like, so my theology is more like, um, whatever you choose, as long as it's in his ways, right? You're in his will. Right. So what that means is that people can get so locked up in analysis paralysis. Should I join this company or this company? Should I go to this college or this college? Should I date this person or this person? Should I marry this person or this person? There is no the one in a relationship. If there was the one, if you married the wrong one, you just caused a cosmic failure in the society, because then that person married the wrong one. And then the person that was supposed to marry them married the wrong one. So it's just like, it doesn't work. Right. I think it's like, as long as whatever you decide, as long as you're doing things in God's ways, which means integrity, right? The fruits of the spirit, kindness, patience, joy. If you're doing things with values, right, then you're in his will. So what that means for, okay, what's the outcome for overflow? Um, to be the most successful company that we can be, because that means we fulfill our mission of inspiring the world to give in a way that's true to our values.
yeah.
So it's not just getting there, but it's how we get there is going to be really, really important to us.